Hey guys, welcome to a new episode of Rushdown Waifu. This episode, we're going to be talking about a character from the X-Men's universe, and her name is Monet, or M, which is her code name, or her extremely long name, which is Monet Yvette Clarice Maria Therese Saint LaCroix. She's a part of the X-Men franchise, and she's not a very well-known character, but I was introduced to her last year when I started to go back and read a lot of old arcs from the X-Men franchise, specifically Generation X. I think she's a really cool character, especially being a woman of color. It's not a whole lot of them in Marvel, especially women like her. And I think she's very unique and cool, and I want more people to get to know her as a character. So we're going to jump right into it. Alright guys, so first thing we're going to do is talk about the origin of Monet. Now, she comes from a very aristocratic, rich family. Her father is Monegasque and her mother is Algerian. Her father, Cartier St. Croix, is an ambassador to France. So Monet grew up very posh, very privileged as a young girl, which made her become really spoiled and bratty and, those type of princess little girls. Unfortunately, around the time when she was 18, her crazy brother, who was dealing with really crazy dark arts, got into some really crazy magic, and he eventually started to transform, and the family banished him, and so he was pretty pissed off. So he came back years later, and he wanted to take Monet with him, and Monet of course refused. I'm not gonna go to this crazy dimension with you. So he said, screw it. So he turned her into this really freak of nature. She turned from just a regular pretty girl to this razor sharp, all her skin was razor sharp, and she had really long fingers that were like razor blades, and it was all red, and she looked really crazy and doped out. It was bizarre. And so when she looked at her appearance, she decided, oh my god, I'm crazy, I'm a freak now. And unfortunately she couldn't speak either, so she decided to leave. And her two little sisters, Nicole and Claudette, went to her room after she had left and thought that she had got killed by her brother. So they decided to use their Wonder Twin powers to, I guess, replicate M, since M was their father's favorite daughter and favorite child as well. And so they impersonated M with their mutant abilities pretty much for quite a while, until they finally were discovered during a trip in Generation X, which is a long arc. I won't go over all of that. Long story short about that, eventually they fessed up to them being M, and what happened, actually M became Penance. And so through a really convoluted way, they decided that they were going to become Penance, and Penance, which was actually M, was going back to her real body. And so everyone was happy. The little girls decided to sacrifice themselves to make sure M had an actual life. And so that ended and was back. She was in Generation X, which was a really great arc for X-Men, which included Emma Frost and Jubilee and Chamber and Sync, who happens to be one of her biggest love interests. Unfortunately, during the end of the Generation X arc, Sync was killed and kind of dispersed the team because there was just so much crazy stuff happening. Banshee became an alcoholic again, Emma kind of went a little nutso, and it just pretty much disbanded. So M had a few runs in different comic books after a while, nothing really substantial, until she became a part of the X Factor investigations, which was in 2011. This particular arc was able to explore her character a lot more deeply and start to show her different facets of who she was, specifically her nationality and her religious faith, which she happens to be Muslim, which played a big part in her character development over the course of her X Factor run. And then after that ended, when she left X Factor, she went to join the X-Men in the reboot of X-Men Volume 4, which is an all-female cast. And so that's pretty much the short end of M's origin story. Alright Alright guys, so now we're going to talk about the design for Monet. Now her costume has changed, I won't say drastically over the years. She's only had a few really drastic changes to her costume. Her Generation X costume wasn't all that great. I didn't really care for it that much. That's probably because a lot of Generation X characters didn't really have really cool costumes to begin with. It wasn't until she left that she got better costumes, especially when she joined the X Factor. She got this really cool bodysuit and it had this really cool cleavage, and it wasn't too revealing. It was sexy, but in a very classy way. Because Monet's character, she's not overly sexual like Emma Frost. She's not overly prude like Jean Grey. She's not overly sexualized like they do Betsy. Of course, that's Psylocke. So I like the fact that her design is pretty sexy, still classy. She has this really long, beautiful, dark hair. Unfortunately, over the years, depending on which artist took over the reins of whatever comic book she was in, her skin tone changed drastically. In some points, her skin was really, really chocolate, and then some points it was super alabaster almost, and then sometimes it was like a caramel color, or it was just a whole different mixture of colors. She went in and out of colors depending on which time period it was. But as far as just her design and stuff, she's very gorgeous and beautiful. She's a model and all that stuff. So she's very striking, especially the way her hair looks and most of the way they drew her. She always has this really flowing hair. And I really enjoy looking at her, especially just from a design standpoint. So yeah, her costume is really good. I think her new X-Men Volume 4 costume looks like a tracksuit. I'm not really that much of a fan of it. It looks like she bought it at some store that sells tracksuits and running shoes and stuff. It doesn't look as cool as her X Factor costume did. That's her best one to me. Alright guys, so now we're going to talk about the powers, abilities, and feats of Monet. Because of course in comic book world, feats are really, really important when you're talking about abilities. Now, let's talk about her list of abilities, because she has quite a few actually. She's pretty much like Marvel's answer to Supergirl in many ways. She has superhuman strength, speed, agility, dexterity, reflexes, coordination, balance, vision, hearing, and endurance. She's of genius level intellect. She has accelerated healing factor, supersonic flight, telekinesis, and telepathy, and she can perceive mutants' auras. So that's a lot, and you might be thinking, wow, she's pretty OP. She's really not. Her abilities aren't overly heightened. She's not to the same level of strength as Superman, and her speed isn't the same speed as maybe, I would say, the Flash or something. So her powers are within reason, just she has a whole lot of them. And specifically what brought me in to like her and be more I guess to notice her is the fact that she's a brawler. She has all these brawling abilities as far as being strong and fast and stuff, and she's also a telepath and she's also a telekinetic. So I thought that was really interesting to have a character like her, because there's not that many people that possess that many abilities like that. So more importantly than just having a long list of abilities, specifically we should talk about her feats. Now, one of my favorite things that she's done, which is probably why I originally became obsessed with her, was when she was fighting Noelle Blanc, aka Ballistic. This was in X Factor issue number 218, and Ballistic has the abilities to create actual bullets out of her fingers. These cyber bullets, but they hurt like regular bullets. And she killed Strong Guy, which pretty much pissed off M, because of course they were getting ready to, I guess he confessed his feelings to her finally, and that kind of made her cry. And of course, when you're emotional, you get kind of crazy. So she decided to try to fight her, and she went head on, and Ballistic shot bullets at her, and M used her telekinetic abilities to stop the bullet right in its tracks. And the panel looks so freaking awesome. Terry Dobson, I believe, does the artwork for this, and it just looks so amazing how they just made that scene. A few other feats that she's done. She had quite a few speed feats. A lot of times in Generation X, she was able to dodge bullets really quickly and shoot them back at them, a lot of her opponents. But one particular feat that I thought was probably really impressive, which would probably be her. She was fighting Jubilee, and Jubilee decided to try to shoot her with her little sparkles, and Monet just looked at her like she was crazy, like at point blank range too. Like these plasmoids was right there in her face, and she just took it. So that was pretty impressive. But probably her best feat of showing her resilience and endurance would probably be her taking a direct hit from World War Hulk when X Factor took on World War Hulk. Um, and so I think that her abilities are really cool the way they display them. That she's never overpowered. Like no matter what she's doing, she's never seemed like she just can defeat every adversary. As of course, she went up against the Hulk and kicked the crap out of her all the way to Jersey, as he said. And then when she fought the Enchantress in X-Men Volume 4, she got beat up the first time around they fought, which was funny. Enchantress was one of my favorite characters, so seeing them two fight was like that was like a fanboy's dream. But seeing her, she does take hits. She's not, indestructible. She's not like overpowered, and I think that her powers and abilities are really well kept. And I think the writers have done a good job with how they, utilize her powers and how they utilize, her abilities to where she doesn't seem like she's just like this overly powered, like I can defeat anything God character. All right, guys. To wrap this up, I'm just going to give my little conclusion here. I really enjoy Monet. I love reading about her. I love seeing her. Every time I've read more and more about her, I've become more and more in love with her, the character. I love the fact that she has such a significance and such a rich history as far as who her character is, and just how they created her as far as her nationality, how her religion ties into that, her moral values, her sensibilities, her wit. Because another thing I love how they write her is she's really witty. Like she's always has a really snarky comment and something snarky and witty to say to someone. Like she's never lost for words, which I love. And just for her being a woman of color in comic books, I find her to be someone that is outside of the norm, because a lot of the comic book characters that are women of color usually have really like they have very predictable power sets and usually really predictable storylines. Like they come from Aaron City, or they're more of a brawler, or they have really like mundane power sets. And for me, power sets and abilities matter to me more than anything else. But it's also nice to have a character that is the same color as me. Like she's a brown skinned woman with long flowing hair who's not Storm. I feel like Storm has become such like the poster child for African American and people of color like characters, where she's like the only one people know. And I think that Monet fits right into that mode of being really awesome and really strong. And I hope that in this new frontier for Marvel, when they do these new books that come out after Secret Wars is over, they're able to add Monet into the mix, and she's able to be a forefronting character, not only for just women of color, but just women of Islamic faith and just women in general. Because seeing that you have a character that looks like you on the pages doing awesome things makes you more emotionally attached to the character. And I feel like Monet has struck a deep chord with me as a person, just seeing her just be awesome. All right, so I hope you enjoyed my video for my waifu, which is Monet. If you love her, I think you should go and definitely read more about her. Definitely read X Factor and read Generation X. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for the next Rushdown Waifu.